Hello and welcome to another Back to Jerusalem podcast. I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, and I'm coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of Sweden. I'm only on delay for those of you that are downloading our podcasts, and that is the majority of people. We get a lot of people from around the world downloading the Back to Jerusalem podcast, but on Saturday mornings, unfortunately, we don't get a lot of people that listen to us live. And the reason for that is because of inconsistency. Because I can only do the Back to Jerusalem live YouTube or on our Back to Jerusalem website page live. I can only do it live when I'm not traveling. So I've tried to keep a schedule, tried to adhere to that schedule. Even during coronavirus, for the most part, I've been in one country, but I haven't been in one place. Even now, I'm not home where I usually do our podcast. I usually do our podcast live from our location in northern Sweden, where my wife and I live when we are hiding out from the coronavirus. But in the last week, I've been traveling. And oftentimes during Saturday, when I'm driving in a car, really, flying an airplane, being at the airport, driving in a car, traveling by train, these are the only reasons that I would not be doing a Back to Jerusalem live podcast. But that does happen, and it has happened quite a few times on Saturday morning. So we haven't been able to build up that Saturday morning audience. But for those of you that do listen, for those of you that do follow us live on Saturday morning, which happens at 10 a.m., when we do our live podcast, for those of you that want to follow us, for those of you that want to join us, we do it live 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's New York City time. So at 10 a.m. New York City time, every Saturday morning, we do a live Back to Jerusalem podcast, which means that if you have questions, concerns, you want to join on and ask us questions, or you want to share a complaint, or you just want to share a thought or a prayer, we would love to hear from you. You can call us anytime on our hotline. We have a live hotline only when we are doing this live. This is something that is not always easy for me to communicate. I'm not the best communicator. I can tell that because on our social media, whenever I put anything up about our live podcast, I always get those comments that say, I clicked on your live link and it's not working. It's not working because we're no longer live. Our live link only works when we are live. So today, during this 30-minute, 45-minute, 1-hour podcast, however long we go, I always start at 10 a.m. and then I go until we cover the subject that we wanted to tackle for the day for our live podcast. But for those that want to follow us live, you can go to backtojerusalem.com/live. backtojerusalem.com/live, and there you will find a live link where when we do our podcast live, even on days where we don't do it on Saturday. So here's the thing. When I'm traveling, sometimes I don't always bring the right microphone. So I have a little microphone that hooks up to my phone, right? And I use that for doing my recording. But on this trip, when I traveled down to Stockholm so that I could fly out and have the meetings that I had this week, I forgot my microphone. So the only way to really record is to either have just the built-in mic on my phone, which I'm staying in the middle of the city right now, and you might even be able to hear it with my earphones. But with this area mic built onto my mobile phone, you'll be able to hear all of the area noise. And because I'm in the middle of the city, it can get really loud. I just did a podcast yesterday or the day before yesterday together with our UK office director, Bethany, and she could hear the trucks right outside my window. We got this big construction truck that's out there every single morning, like sucking up. Here's the thing: if you want to stay in cheaper places for cheaper prices, you're going to get a lot of noise in the city. So you can call us anytime that we're live. Right now, I have my earphones that I'm traveling with, and I put it into my computer and do the recording there. And because I'm not using my phone right now, I've done a couple of podcasts live this week. A really great podcast this week that will be coming down the range. It's already in the pipeline to be posted in the coming week. a professor from the Christian University of Arizona that is in charge of the Cultural Research Center. His name is Dr. Barna, and he's the most quoted Christian in the U.S. right now. And he gave me an update that I think you're going to want to listen to for yourself. He and his research team did a study in the United States about the change of Christians in America. And even though it's about America, I think it's indicative for the rest of the world, because what is happening right now in America with Western Christianity is that we are seeing more and more Christians gather their worldview from secular sources. So fewer and fewer Christians actually have a Christian worldview, a biblical-based worldview, meaning that their worldview is no longer based on the Bible, meaning that their worldview is no longer based on the Word of God. So that changes everything about how they interact with the society around them. Because when you no longer believe in a biblical worldview, you do a lot of things in society that you would not necessarily do if you had a biblical worldview. And you don't do a lot of things that you would do if you had a biblical worldview. That's going to be an amazing podcast. I actually recorded that live so that anybody that was listening that wanted to listen could come on and listen to us live. There was no announcement. I don't know. I think some people might have some sort of device on YouTube that lets them know whenever we are live on YouTube. And I think Facebook might be a little bit better of that. I've been thinking about taking our backtojerusalem.com/live link and moving that to our Facebook Live, because there I think we would get more alerts possibly. Anyway, if you listen live, or if you come on during the time that we are live, which is 10 a.m. New York City time, every Saturday, unless I'm traveling on that Saturday, you can call in. We have a live hotline. It's for those that are watching us live right now. The number is 1-703-348-7756. For those of you that download this podcast, you can write this number down. 10 a.m. or after 10 a.m., at least for the first half hour, you will be able to call in and ask questions, give any kind of thought or prayer request that you might want to share with the Back to Jerusalem missionaries from China. Again, that's 1-703-348-7756. You can just write that down, and at 10 a.m. on Saturday, New York City time, call in and share. Or you can follow us live as we're doing the recording at backtojerusalem.com/live. Anyway, this week was pretty cool because we did, I think it was on Thursday, I just put up a really quick kind of, I want to say it was, what do you call it? Like a research, whatever. It's a thing where you could vote, right? Like just a little vote panel where you could choose what you wanted to listen to for our Back to Jerusalem live podcast. And I gave 4 different choices that we can give an update on the persecution of China. We can give an update on the president of North Korea. We could give an update on what's taking place in Lebanon, or we can give an update on the U.S. presidential elections. The last one, the U.S. presidential elections, actually got the fewest votes, and I understand it. You're listening about the U.S. presidential elections every single day, regardless of which country you live in, right? It's bombarding the news, and it will be. That's only going to increase from now until the first week of November, when the United States has their election. So I think a lot of people are already burned out. I completely understand, completely get it. It kind of feels like we've been doing an election in the United States since the last 2016 election. There were so many people that I think were disappointed with the results of the election in 2016 that they immediately started the campaign for the next election. I mean, if you watch the news at all, I mean, basically there was an attack on President Trump from the time that he took office. It's been extremely radical, and the way it's unprecedented. I mean, there's zero positive news coverage on President Trump. And no matter how much you hate the man, no matter how much you do not like him, it is impossible for anybody to be covered in the news as bad as Donald Trump. Right now, you can find more positive news articles, or at least neutral news articles on Kim Jong-un. You can find more positive news articles on Kim Jong-un and President Xi, the president of China, than you can on Donald Trump. No matter how much you hate the guy, no matter how much you dislike the guy, you still can't really put him on the same level as those two world leaders, right? These are dictators. These are people that they kill people that disagree with them politically. They execute people that disagree with them politically. It depends on which country you're talking about, whether it's North Korea or China, about how intense that gets. But nobody can get as much negative coverage as Donald Trump. And a lot of people might be listening to this podcast being like, dude, wait a minute, you are a Chinese ministry. We listen to you for stuff about the Chinese ministry, not about U.S. politics. Fair enough. That's why I'm not going to be covering it in this podcast. But let me just say this. That election is going to impact everybody, including us in China and the 1040 window between China and Jerusalem. Because make no mistake about it, there is definitely a Cold War. I said earlier in this year that I believe that we might be in the beginning stages of a Cold War. I think absolutely we are in a Cold War. Right now, we are witnessing a Cold War take place between China and the US. Now, a lot of people might, hey, I just saw somebody write in and say, hey, God bless you, Eugene. It was really great to have you with us on our Back to Jerusalem Live podcast. For those of you that don't know, you don't always have to call either. You can call. Again, our live hotline is 1-703-348-7756. I understand that a lot of people that listen to our podcast live are not able to necessarily call in because it's an international call. Completely understand, get it. The reason why it's really great to listen live as well is that you can actually write in. And so just got someone wrote in and said, hey, God bless you, Eugene. God bless you. Thank you very much for just, sending your blessings our way. Really, really appreciate it. But when looking at the two countries, what I said several months ago is that I believe that we are in the in the beginning stages of a Cold War. And I definitely feel that way now. One of the things that is really raising concern for China watchers is the fact that this week China fired 2 missiles, including one of their missiles that has been dubbed as the aircraft carrier killer. They fired them into the China Sea after accusing, so this happened directly after, this is almost done in a response, but they don't really connect the two, though the two are connected. After accusing the U.S. of sending a U-2 spy plane into a no-fly zone. And the U.S. is accusing China of not abiding by international laws of the sea for Southeast Asia. And so they've been flying a U-2 spy plane into an area which is considered to be international waters by the rest of the world, but not considered to be international waters by China. So China is making their own borders right now, expanding those borders, especially into the South China Sea. They're building islands, literally building islands, which I covered in other podcasts before. They're building islands in the South China Sea and saying, look, we have land, this is ours, we have military people on the land, and other people have griped and moaned about it, but not really a lot that people can do. So China is getting resistance from the Philippines, from Japan, because these are disputed fishing waters. Getting pushback from Vietnam, pushback from Malaysia, pushback from Indonesia. So all of their neighbors in the South China Sea are pushing back. And so Big Brother, United States, is kind of pulling in there because that is a part of international security for shipping lines to be able to travel these waters freely, as they have been doing now for decades. And now China's claiming new waters. They're definitely getting more aggressive. We've seen that in their diplomacy. We've seen that just today, China had their foreign minister in Norway, made it very clear that Norway should not, quote unquote, politicize the Nobel Peace Prize. They would hate to see it politicized, because if it does become politicized, meaning that if any Nobel Peace Prize is given to a Chinese dissident, then what you will see is a blowback from China, as what happened last time. Basically, all Norwegian diplomats were kept from going into China. All Norwegian goods were kept from being sold inside of China. All Norwegian citizens that wanted to travel to China had to go through a special process to get approval for their visa. So yeah, no, that's not political at all. So they would really, really hate to see it politicized, which means that if you do anything with the Nobel Peace Prize, giving it to people that we don't like or that we consider to be interfering in Chinese national politics, then we will crush you politically, economically, and who knows, maybe even militarily, as we're looking at right now, especially as it pertains to places like Taiwan. And so Taiwan is starting to become a real pain in the butt for China. With the whole COVID-19 thing, what we saw was Taiwan needing to get information from the WHO, but they're not officially recognized from the WHO because of China. And we saw some real tap dancing, and we covered it for the first couple months of the coronavirus, but we've moved on. But the missiles that were shot into the South China Morning Sea this week is a big deal. This is a major siren being put up on the world stage that says, hey, there are rising tensions between these two giants, the US and China, and that requires a lot of concentrated prayer. Because it is clear. Before I said I believe that we are moving into the beginning stages, it's clear now. I don't even think that there's an argument. We are now in the beginning stages of a Cold War between China and the United States. And that might change if there is another president. One of the things that we have seen as signals both from China as well as from politicians in the United States, this is not really even being argued anymore, that China would much rather see a President Joe Biden than a President Donald Trump. Nancy Pelosi, the third most powerful person in the United States, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, came out and said in an interview that she believes that China would much rather see a President Joe Biden win the election. And now the Chinese politicians have also given indicators that say that they would like to see a Joe Biden win as well, to get things back to normal. And for them, normal means that they get all the advantages in the game, and then you get none of the advantages in the game. And then they use all those advantages economically to build up their country militarily. That's just what's been happening for a very long time. That is not what's happening now. That is not fun for anybody. This is a very difficult stage in U.S.-Chinese relations. But what is clear is that China and the United States are in the beginning stages of a new Cold War. And that should consider everybody, not just missionaries in China focused on taking the gospel into the 1040 window in the areas between China and Jerusalem, but for everybody. Because, and there's a couple of differences. What is a Cold War? I mean, when we look at the Cold War with Russia, one of the things that we see with China, with the United States and Russia during the Cold War is that most of the competition between the two nations was largely played out politically and militarily. So there was always this mutual destruction that was agreed upon between both nations, kept both nations from kind of taking massive steps for fear of the other one retaliating with nuclear weapons. No joke when you're talking about nuclear weapons that can guarantee mutual destruction. But one of the things that was clear, and this is even with the Soviet Union lying about their income, their GDP, even when the Soviet Union lied about their level of GDP through most of the Soviet era, the highest they would have ever gotten, the closest that they would have ever gotten, is 40% of American GDP. But I don't think that was even a real number. So the Russian economy during the entirety of the Cold War was always about 40% of the United States. Today, the state of California by itself has a higher GDP than all of Russia. So Russia economically was never really a threat. And that was one of the reasons why President Reagan started the arms race. Because by having the arms race, by building up all these weapons and freaking out the Soviet Union was going and spending all of the money that they did have on weapons. And so they didn't have money really for anything else. Their strategy was down the tubes. Their development was down the tubes. Their building of their economy was down the tubes. And the economy impacted the amount that they were able to spend on the military, and the amount that they spent on the military kept them from building or investing in their economy. That's not the case with China. China is a completely different animal. There was very little trade taking place between the two competing blocks of Russia and the United States. There's a lot of trade taking place between China and the United States. Because now the main contest between the US and China is economic, so not necessarily political and military. Though those are also this Cold War will be played out in those domains as well. And that's why I'm just now pointing this out, because this is a big deal. Earlier this year, we've been seeing the Chinese Navy move in like never before into the South China Morning Sea, into the South China Sea. And one of the things that we're seeing in the South China Sea is that this military presence is pushing the U.S. presence more and more out of that area, because there's no desire for conflict. Nobody wants a war. And so what we're seeing, instead of a military confrontation, is an economic confrontation. And that's when we have the trade war. Right now, with a complete trade freeze between the United States and China. And when I say trade freeze, I'm not saying it's all stopped, but it's stopping on a massive scale. And it's hurting less than what we thought. All right, I thought that it would hurt much, much less. If you'd asked me December 2019 what the situation would be for the United States, I would have said it would be horrible if they chose to engage China in a trade war. I was wrong. It's completely wrong. No matter what you're hearing from the news, no matter what you're reading on Bloomberg, if you listen to those that will tell you what the real situation is on the ground, China is being hurt much, much more. I know that from direct experience. I'm seeing my friends, people that I work together with, I'm seeing factories that I'm working in close down, shut down, unemployment go through the roof, profit margins dropped out from the bottom. This is the big war that's taking place in this Cold War, this new Cold War between China and the United States. And this can potentially impact investment, travel, trade, commerce, all of these different things that B2J missionaries are engaged in from China to Jerusalem, especially as it relates to the One Belt, One Road initiative from China back to Jerusalem. If you're not familiar with the One Belt, One Road trade initiative, this is the largest financial investment from any government anywhere in the world today, where China is investing through transportation, communication, all kinds of different trade agreements are being made between China and all of the nations between China and Jerusalem. And if a full-scale war does break out militarily and politically between the United States and China, this will impact that One Belt, One Road trade initiative, which will impact back to Jerusalem missionaries working in the area between China and Jerusalem. So this is one of the things that I think that we need to be hyper alert of and aware of. But let me get to the meat of this podcast. I want to talk about this podcast and leave the lines open at least for a few minutes before we close out for the Saturday morning live podcast. We've already started to creep up on our first half hour. And for this podcast, I don't think we will last much longer than 45 minutes. So we got about 15, 20 minutes left in this podcast. So I want to dedicate this portion to those that voted on dingdash.com to hear an update about North Korea. So if you voted on dingdash.com, or if you have an idea of what you would like to listen to for our next podcast, write to us, participate in the voting that we do on dingdash.com. You can go to dingdash.com, open up a free account if you haven't already. Dingdash.com is basically like a Twitter page for believers living in closed countries. And believers that are living in countries that are not closed can also join us. We have been seeing quite a number of people from around the world sign up on Dingdash. It's been a blast. We've gotten a lot of people. I've gotten to know a lot of people that I've never gotten to know before. In fact, I was able to, just this week, I did a trip to Poland where I met together with an amazing group of people that I want to give a big shout out for. There was a lovely Christian sister who fixed me a keto meal in Poland, and oh man, it was amazing. It was really good. First, we started off with a kind of Polish pancake. It was a keto pancake that was low in carbs. I'm not sure what it was made out of. They told me, I forgot, but it was amazing. So I got these pancakes. And instead of cream, I had smetana. And smetana, for those of you that don't know, is basically straight fat cream. It's the fattest cream. Imagine cream, or imagine sour cream, but fatter, much more fat. And so we had that, and they put blueberries on top. All of this, of which kept me within my 25 grams of carbs per day range. And then by the way, they asked me what would you like, or any diet restrictions you should know about, and I said no, none at all. And the reason I said that is because I hate it when people make a big deal about what they eat when they're with you. Like, I can't eat that, or I can't eat that. Dude, just eat what you can eat and don't eat what you can't eat. You don't have to make a big deal about it. You don't need to make other people feel like they're responsible for making things available at the table that fit your diet. Now, I know there are people that have special diets that, they can't eat certain things that might be dangerous for their health. Okay, I get it. You might have a peanut allergy. You might be lactose intolerant. Those kind of things I completely understand. Or if you have to ask about flour because you have a wheat allergy or something like that, it's a medical issue. But for me, dude, put whatever's on the table. I promise you, I'll find something that I like. And you don't have to even pick a special restaurant. I can go to any restaurant and get what works for me. I don't need to announce and make you aware of what restrictions I have. So what I really appreciate about working with the people with Back to Jerusalem that are, have special, if you ever travel with Belinda, she's our main travel arranger for Back to Jerusalem, and she has special things that she cannot consume because she's allergic to them. And she doesn't make a big deal about it. She just knows what she can and can't consume. And so she does her thing. And we got a couple vegans that we work with inside of China. They never mention the fact that they're vegetarians. They never mention the fact that they're vegetarians. We got a couple vegans that we work with in the UK. They just do their thing. They're not vegan evangelists. They're not lactose intolerant evangelists. I'm probably the most vocal. I'm probably the biggest butthole out of everybody when it comes to sharing about your diet. It's because I love food. I love everything about food. And so when I went to Poland, they just really cut out all the stops. And one of the things that I had that I really, really loved was a Polish pickle. Now, they refused to call them pickles and said these are not pickles, these are cucumbers that are basically prepared in salt and water, I believe. That's they sit in these jars for a while, so it's almost like they're pickled, but they made a distinction that these are not pickled. Whatever they were amazing. They were crunchy. They were amazing cucumbers. I absolutely loved them. And it was just made with salt and water. So there was no vinegar. There was no sugar. There was, nothing added to those. And a lot of the things that we had on our table during that time was, from a very nearby farm. And anyway, there was a brother there that had also started to go keto just within the last month. So he was still in that keto flu stage. So it was fun to meet with him. I met with him, was able to kind of communicate with this Polish group from Dingdash because they had got on dingdash.com, and I was able to communicate with them. Just this morning, I had a great conversation with a dear brother from France who wants to publish our books into the French language and also possibly put the Back to Jerusalem website in French. And I connected with him using Dingdash. So what is great about Dingdash is this small little Christian community of people from around the world that, when you get onto Instagram, when you get onto Twitter, when you get onto Facebook, you got, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people from around the world. So you kind of get lost in the sea. But when you come into Dingdash, we're kind of like a small church. Dingdash only has about 1,500 users right now. So it's not a big base. It's just a few hundred users using it on a regular basis. And so you get to interact with people. People get more exposed to your material, your thoughts, your ideas, and who you are as an individual. They get more exposed to you and who you are as an individual than what they would in a much bigger forum like Facebook. And unlike Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or WeChat, we don't sell your information. We don't share your information. We don't give it to the government. We don't make it available to anybody. And if you decide a couple years down the road that you don't like Dingdash and you want to delete your account, you're free to do that. Unlike Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, we don't keep your information. We don't maintain your information. We don't share your information with Google so that you can be targeted for sales or targeted by governments that may want to target you. So this is one of the main differences that we have between Dingdash and other social media platforms around the world. So on Dingdash this week we had a vote, and we allowed people to vote what we would talk about for today's subject. And so for today's subject, the number one vote that people voted for was North Korea. People wanted to hear about what is happening in North Korea because it's getting crazy. Things are getting really tough inside of North Korea. In fact, we just did a 30-day prayer for North Korea on Dingdash. So people were able to follow us every day for 30 days. That was updated by Bethany from our UK office. For 30 days, people were able to follow us on dingdash.com along with our 30 days of prayer for the nation of North Korea. And the reason why I wanted to, or we had people that suggested on Dingdash that, hey, maybe we should start a group to pray for North Korea. And so I said, hey, let's do that. Let's pray for North Korea. So we started 30 days of prayer for North Korea. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because North Korea has been going through a very difficult time in the last couple of months. People are starving. We've been getting information, reports from the field. Our guys that are on the ground right now inside North Korea say, hey, people here have not been getting their food kits for about 4 months. Now, in a communist system, for those of you that are not familiar with the setup inside of North Korea, most people, they instead of working for money, what they do is they just work for the state. They work for the government, and the government provides everything for them. So the government provides you with your housing. The government provides you with your food. The government provides you with your job. The government is your source for everything. So if you need food, you have to get the food kit from the government. The government gives out these food kits that are very much like, if anybody listening to this podcast have ever been to like a World War II museum in the West, whether it's America, Europe, UK, wherever, you can go into these museums and see these food kits. My grandfather, my late grandfather, who just passed away about a year ago, he used to tell me about the food kits that they used to give out in Hartford City, Indiana. And it wasn't for free ham, but it was for meat. You couldn't buy as much meat as you wanted. You had to have a chit to buy meat. And with your chit, so you'd give it a chit over for your meat, and then you could purchase your meat from the grocery store. And it only allowed you 1, 2, 3 pounds or whatever it was. So it was limited. So you couldn't just go in and buy whatever you wanted during World War II, because there was rationing taking place during World War II. So there's a rationing for everything. There was a rationing for fuel. There was a rationing for meat. There was a rationing for steel. There was a rationing for many different things. In fact, my wife and I, we went to a special city not far from a fishing village called Smögen. every year we like to go to this little fishing village on the west coast of Sweden called Smogen. And on one particular day last month, we decided to go to a seaside city not far from Smogen to eat at a restaurant for lunch that her parents had recommended to us. And when we went there, they had one little small street that you could walk down. And as we were walking down, there was this home that was a historical landmark. It was an old home that had been built several hundred years ago, and in the window of the home, they weren't open to walk inside of the home or anything, but in the window of the home, you could see several things that had been a part of the home throughout the years. And in one of the windows was a chit booklet. It was a booklet for you to purchase flour, sugar during World War II. In Sweden. So it wasn't just the United States. We saw, you can see the same thing in Sweden, and many people listening to this podcast from other nations as well will be very familiar with the chit system if you know anything about the history of World War II, or if you're old enough to remember your parents talking about World War II. Those that grew up during communist era, Soviet era control in Eastern Europe are also very familiar with the chit system. Right now, with our team on the ground inside North Korea, they've told us very clearly, right now, North Korea is not good. People have not received their food chits for the last 4 months. So people are starving. How are they surviving? I don't know. But many of you that are listening to this podcast, you have been praying for the North Korean projects that we've been running. That's all I can say about our projects inside North Korea, is that they are projects that are operating inside of North Korea. I can't tell you any more than that, but they should have been shut down already. We have one specific project that should have been shut down already because of COVID-19 inside of North Korea. It has not. It has not been shut down, and I believe that as a direct result of your prayers. But this week, it was reported that North Korea has just opened up their military rations. North Korea never does that. They just had to come out and open up their military rations to supply food to the people in Pyongyang. That's not good. It's only for the people in Pyongyang. Pyongyang always gets first dibs. The military usually gets first dibs as well, but they have stock that has been in for a while, and now they're having to open up those supply lines. So we're basically going into the Joseph rations of Egypt, into the silos, and pulling out the grain that's been stored up to make it through the 7 years of famine. Because we're in a time of famine right now inside of North Korea. And the people in North Korea are hungry and they're starving, but they can't complain too loudly. The person that complains too loudly gets killed. So if you don't die of starvation, you'll die of a beatdown. So at least with starvation, you might be able to find food one day. But if you tick off the wrong person at the wrong time, you will catch a beatdown. This is not protests in America where you get to throw things at cops and spit at cops and tell cops how despicable they are. If they were despicable, they would be like North Korean cops and you would get a beatdown. The one with the biggest tire iron wins, and their tire iron is going to be bigger than yours. Especially uneducated young people that are out in the street have no clue what they're even talking about, because they're actually protesting because they want the same thing that they have inside of North Korea. Basically, the people that are behind the Black Lives Matter movement, I've talked about this before, are very pro-communist. Black Lives Matter as an organization. There are many Christians that are out there petitioning for Black Lives Matter that truly want equality. They want everybody that is a believer stands on the side of having equality among all races, among all people. But Black Lives Matter as an organization is pro-communist, anti-family, anti-capitalist, anti-Christian. Yes, anti-Christian. And they would like to adopt the same government system that they have in North Korea. And if you go to North Korea, you'll see a police group that will give you a beatdown if you complain about even being hungry. So what we have right now inside of North Korea is information from the field of people saying that they have not been able to get their food rations for a while. So these food rations, these food banks have been opened up, but the food rations are mainly rice and corn. There's no nutrition in rice and corn. This is the reason why those inside of North Korea are considerably shorter in height than those in North Korea. I'm sorry, in South Korea. So in North Korea, the North Korean counterparts to their South Koreans are much taller, North Koreans are much shorter. And the reason why is North Koreans are deprived of nutrition. They are suffering from malnutrition. You have 20-year-olds that look like they're in their teens because they haven't fully gone through puberty. Their bodies did not have the proper nutrition to even go through their stages of puberty. Their height is, they're like a full 6 inches to a foot shorter than their South Korean counterparts because of malnutrition. If you've been following Back to Jerusalem at all in the last couple of months, one of the things that we've been sharing about is that North Korea put out an APB, an important public bulletin about dogs. So in the beginning, it was basically any restaurant that had dogs had to give their dogs to to the southern part of North Korea to be able to supply the restaurants in the southern part of North Korea with dogs. Dog meat is very popular inside of North Korea. And so the wealthier, the more privileged people in the southern part of North Korea receive the food first. Pyongyang being the most important. So Pyongyang put out an APB for dogs all around the country, especially in the north, to bring them down to the southern part of North Korea so that they could have the dogs. And then once all of the restaurants ran out of dogs, then it was people. It was a door-to-door operation that went around North Korea. Anybody that had a dog had to give up the dog so that it could be given over to the restaurants for politicians in North Korea, in Pyongyang. So Pyongyang basically took all the dog meat from around the country. That was last month and this month. There's not going to be any more meat anywhere. Here's the thing about when you eat all of your meat. You slaughter all of the productive animals. You have no animals that will be able to reproduce in the future. You kill off your source of food for tomorrow. I'm afraid that not only is North Korea consuming all of their meat today, but they're killing off their source for meat tomorrow. This is getting really bad. You have to pray for North Korea because in addition to this problem, you have international sanctions have not gotten better. The COVID situation inside of China has not gotten better. The border between North Korea and China is as closed as it was a couple months ago. There are border regions that are starting to open up, but not really legally. There's a lot of illegal operations that are taking place, but those illegal operations are being shut down by both the Chinese government and the North Korean government. People are doing everything that they can to get food across the border, and the governments are doing everything they can to keep from that food crossing the border because they know that if the food comes across the border, people are going to have to carry that food, and people that carry that food are going to be probably carrying more than food, and people that are carrying more than food probably could be carriers of COVID. So the border closures have been mainly due to COVID, the COVID pandemic, and that is bad. In addition to that, yesterday, if you went onto our website and you saw our newest article on North Korea, you would see that they had a severe monsoon that has destroyed at least 100,000 acres of farmland. Guys, 100,000 acres of farmland destroyed inside of North Korea from a monsoon this week. And in fact, if you go onto North Korean website, you'll see that North Korea did something that they've never done before, which was a live update of the monsoons as they were hitting North Korea. North Korea's never really done that before. This was like a live broadcast on their TV channel covering the situation inside of North Korea. And the reason why is because people are watching so closely this monsoon that was coming through, because they knew that any crops that are destroyed is going to impact them. Right now, they're at harvest season. And it's one of the worst harvests that we've seen in years. And now, in addition to that, you have a monsoon coming through and destroying 100,000 acres of farmland. This does not bode well for the winter months. We are now moving into the fall. North Korea has to make it through the winter months, and they are starving. And they're refusing food from other countries. They're afraid that any food imports that might come in as emergency help from other countries might come with strings attached and might come with COVID-19. And Korea's medical system is unable to cope with COVID-19. And on top of that, guys, you're not going to be really hearing about this kind of in-depth coverage for North Korea anywhere else. But in addition to that, the country doesn't even know who's leading them at the moment. They really don't. North Korea just had to come out with pictures of Kim Jong-un giving speeches about the impact of the monsoon. And the reason why they're doing that is to show that he's still alive. They have to prove that he's still alive because there's been so many rumors circulating around the internet that he's died. If you listen to the rumors, including the reports that Back to Jerusalem has put out this year, you would have thought that Kim Jong-un died 6 times this year. It has gotten really bad inside of North Korea because of the number of times that we don't even know who's in charge of North Korea. Right now, there's been several reports, right? If you have not been following the Back to Jerusalem reports, the biggest one that we came out with was in April, when I was pretty certain that he was either in a coma or dead. And I'm still not certain that he was not in a coma during April. I believe that there was legitimacy for those reports, and I still believe that he was in a state where his health was in jeopardy. I believe that from the reports that we were getting from the field. The first major report that we followed up on, and we were the first and the earliest to report the fact that he might be dead, that came in late April, and that's when a rumor leaked out of Hong Kong that Kim Jong-un was dead, or in a coma, or in surgery, or recovering for surgery, or hiding from the coronavirus. Nobody really knew. You know, we still don't know what day he was born. We don't know what year he was born. You don't believe me? Look it up. He's the only leader in the world that the world does not know when he was born. Go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia will give you a date, but that is a guess. Keep reading Wikipedia. What you'll see is, well, he was born on this day, or this day. There's 3 different years that they give you to choose from. It's spin the wheel and choose one on the day that he was born, or the year that he was born. We don't even know the year Kim Jong-un was born. And the reason why is he was born of a mistress of Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il had in a dance troupe that came in from Japan. Yes, that's right. Kim Jong-un's mother's from Japan, which makes him a part of the outcast system, the low caste system, the persecuted class system. But because his father was Kim Jong-il, then he gets away with it. But in April, there was information that came from Hong Kong that Kim Jong-un had gone through heart surgery and he had slipped into a coma and things had gotten bad. And then we got reports that Chinese doctors had flown into Pyongyang to help take care of the situation. It looked like the musical Death of Stalin. The musical. If you haven't seen the musical, that's a hilarious show. A hilarious movie. But no one really knew. We didn't know. We were just trying to share information as we were getting it from the field. 2 months later, once it came out that he wasn't dead, they had pictures of him at a fertilizer factory which was appropriate considering the amount of crap that comes out of the news articles inside of North Korea. So it was Kim Jong-un was at a fertilizer factory, and that was kind of the proof, the early proof that he was still alive. And I looked at the photos, I examined the photos, I looked at what other experts were saying about the photos of him at the fertilizer factory. There was no real proof that those had taken place after the fact that people had said that he had slipped into a coma. But I believed them. I said, okay, I believe that he is alive because of these photos, but I do not believe that he is in good health. And I still maintain that position, at least from the information that I've been able to piece together. So 2 months later, after April and June, we started to get information that he was dead again. This time it came from Japan's foreign minister, a guy by the name of Taro Kono, who reported that he had suspicions about the North Koreans' health due to movements inside of the country, and he believed that the North Korean leader was probably dead and that his sister would take over. Then again in July, rumors about him being dead started to circulate again when there was an important summit meeting that it was clear that Kim Jong-un was not going to be able to attend. And then just this week, again, a South Korean diplomat got the rumor mill churning when he came out and said, yeah, the leader might be in coma or possibly dead. So this leader that nobody even knows what year he was born, we may not even know which year he will die. So we don't know if he was born in 1982, 1983, or 1984, which makes him pretty young, by the way. So he's not even 40 years old, and he's looking at some pretty serious heart conditions, mainly because of his weight. He's the only one inside North Korea that's dealing with a weight issue, which is quite sad what the people are going through inside of North Korea. But the Christian world needs to pray for North Korea. The reason why they need to pray for North Korea is because we don't know who the next leader will be. Kim Jong-un is a bad leader. He's an evil leader. He persecutes Christians like there's no tomorrow. But his sister could possibly be worse. His sister, if possible, could possibly be worse. And that is the update right now that we have for North Korea. Is the North Korean leader dead or not? At the moment, I do not believe that he is. I do believe that he is staying out of the public area because of COVID-19. I do believe that they have him on a deep, deep lockdown like Joe Biden and not allowing him to have access to anybody in the public because they believe that Kim Jong-un might be exposed to a deadly virus and they do not want to lose him. One of the things that we know about COVID-19, if we know nothing else, is that those that have obesity issues or heart issues are most likely to be the victims of COVID-19. So that makes him a prime candidate. But we simply don't know who will take over after him. So let's pray. Let's pray for the nation of North Korea. Pray for the leadership of North Korea. May they be radically changed. May they repent of their sins. May they give praise and honor to the one and only true God. And may we see a revival in North Korea. I want to thank you guys for joining us for another Back to Jerusalem live podcast on a Saturday morning. Again, we do this every Saturday morning starting at 10 a.m. New York City time. We would love to hear from you. We'd love for you to join us. You can call us on our live hotline. I usually put that up if you want to join us on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. New York City time. You simply go on to www.backtojerusalem.com/live. And you can also write on, we've got a few people that have wrote a couple of updates letting us know that you guys are listening. Thank you guys so much for letting us know that you're listening. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for the interaction. Thanks for your support. And thank you for either joining us live or downloading this Back to Jerusalem podcast. Again, I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of Sweden. God bless you.